Here you are, and this is part of the sharing from the Holy Scriptures. This is the translation that is used from the Aramaic. This is mainly a revelation, and after much prayer and analysis, then it was revealed what truly the revelation is like. So you can verify there is both the Hebrew translation and also the English, and truly starts from Bereshit in Genesis. So these boards in fact shows the time, so it is from the right to the left, okay, and then it shows the plan of salvation ever since the time Yahweh, the true creator, was in fact the shepherd of the slaves in Egypt, and truly shows very neatly the also the situation regarding Lucifer, and obviously he envied when the earth was made, and that's what brought sin into the world, because the earth then was formed, and then he became very envious, and he thought he could do himself and he couldn't, and then he became Satan, or the adversary. So then it shows the angels, when they came down, they were cast, the third part, and then Adam, in our language we understand, and then came the male and female. From there then the female obviously did sin, because then when the earth was formed, then this is the Garden of Eden, and this is when the main understanding of the camp started, because the earth around it was contaminated with sin. This is what these tiny symbols are. These are devils or demons. And then obviously the beast, when came, he standed or did stand at the entrance of the garden, and from there he deceived Eve, and obviously Adam wasn't there with her. That's why Shimon then stated that woman sinned first. So this is what it means. So then from below comes then the understanding they were cast out, and they were then without direction. And this is the understanding of it, starting then at the understanding of body, soul, and spirit. In the garden before sin, those they were a unit. Then body, soul, and spirit. But then when sin entered, the spirit part of it was then broken, and this is what it meant. So then they had the body and the soul, the living soul, but then the spirit was severed because of the sin. So then coming from there, then comes the understanding of the Creator and his plan of salvation then. Okay, he was first, then obviously he showed himself to Abraham in the form of being a friend, and he was obedient, and then from there then the people went to Egypt, and they began to multiply. Obviously there are other steps from Abraham to Egypt, but this is the main understanding of the plan of salvation. And then the group of people became very numerous, and then obviously then Yahweh himself, he came and shepherded them out of the land of Egypt with great signs and wonders. Then they went through the sea, and then from there they were brought near the mountain. And this is what this group of people are. And this is the mountain, and then Moshe went up to the mountain and received then the laws, the holy laws. Then he came down, and this is what it means in the spirit. Okay, so then when we read in many portions of the renewed covenant, the spirit of Elohim then bears testimony with our spirits after is then relinked. This is what it means previously. This is the law that we understand. This is the body, the soul, and then the spirit that was only linked back through the law. This is what it means. So then when there is the portion of the scriptures in Deuteronomy And also in many other areas is stating, thou shalt obey Yahweh thy Elohim with your total strength in your body, control your body, then with your soul, and then becoming one with Him in the Spirit by being obedient to the law, and then encouraging your neighbor as you then encouraged yourself. And this is what Yahshua meant when He said there is no greater law than these. So then we understand also, and this is a bit of other design, and this is prior of going to the mountain when Moshe received the understandings from the Creator in a burning bush. And then from there came obviously down to the people, and they began to learn the ways of the Creator. And then they had obviously the tabernacle set up, and this is what it is there. The perimeter then was set. This is the starting of the understanding of the set apart. Then the tabernacle is there, and then the law. And observe very intently, this is the body, the soul, and the spirit interrelated with the law, because it was the only way for them to have one relationship with the Creator. And then obviously this area is the tabernacle, and the both S's there symbolizing obviously the spirit and the spirit relinked through the law only. And then from there obviously then they would be involved in having Yahshua then when He first came. So this is what it means. And then up there is obviously the feasts. We understand it from Leviticus, the 23rd chapter, from the 1st verse to the 21st verse. There is the spring feast. This is what Yahshua came to do. And this is the timeline. It was indicated by the great star. And this is the 3999 when He was born. First day of the Feast of the Tabernacles, and He tabernacled with us. This is what this line means. And then Yahshua then died for us. And then from there came the relink. This is what it means in both S's. But then He was the only person able to maintain the law in its entirety, so He would become then in us the living Torah. And the Torah was never abolished. Simply completed the area of the sacrifices of animals. And then obviously in the world, besides Yahshua, there is this symbol, and that is the spirit, the evil spirit of Satan, his demon symbolizing by the tiny s, and then the snake around it. So this is what people are born with. They have to have a spirit link in the world to function, and this is what they have. So then when Yahshua came, He was able to break this link, and this is what it means. In a world when a person is born, a person has a body, a soul, and then the spirit is a demon that is linked with the spirit world. Okay? And then prior of our time, they did not have the nearing line. This is what the nearing line means. In Shavuot, it was granted the nearing line in the world. So when the people hear from the Spirit, they hearing the nearing line that is contaminated, because from the time of then Yahshua, when it was set in Shavuot, the column of fire there was in Egypt, you can understand from this area, that separated the Egyptians from the Hebrews, was the same column that was then in Shavuot or Pentecost. And the first function of Ruach HaKodesh was speaking of tongues. And there is a set of them, and only there are 7 functions in the Spirit. So there is no gifting of the Spirit. Only 7 functions given only to the set apart people. And this then of course is the nearing line. The center line is Yahweh, is the Creator, but he can't be disturbed. And there is then the nearing line in Hebrews 5. Those that come near him must believe that he is, and he is the rewarder of those who diligently search for him. And this is heaven. And then from there we understand that these came from Yahshua. And then the objective of this was bringing then salvation to the Goys, or the Gentiles that were not from the set apart. So as the Creator then, he was the shepherd of his people that came from Egypt, and they were the slaves. So the plan was to make these people, after more than 1,000 years of training, they themselves would become then the shepherds of those Goys outside from this time and the time of Yahshua. So then it started making more sense. So then what was the plan? After the ascension of the Mashiach, then the plan was for them to go out in groups. And this is what it means. There it is. This is the group that should go out. The church lives there. That's Yahweh Yeshua in Kadosh Kadoshim. So they would practice exactly the same what they did previously, except then they would not use any more animals, but they would be in worship of Yahweh Yeshua and Kadosh Kadoshim, maintaining the nearing line intact. So then later it would become this area. These are the camps, and then each Kadosh Kadoshim, or Holy of Holies, and they would be maintained obviously by the priests as before. There is no change, because Yahshua said in the 23rd chapter of Matthew, the first gospel, whatsoever Moses said for you to do and observe, these do and observe, because he knew in the future they would go out from Jerusalem and they would build camps. Okay, so then if you want to prove of this point, we can then turn to Revelation, the 20th chapter, and verse number 9. It states very plainly, and then we can observe what he meant. So this is when the armies of the world are going to join up together to try to destroy the camps and the holy city. And then 9, it states, and they went up on a breadth of the earth and encircled the camps of the set apart believers and the beloved city. So this gives you the answer. Camps. So these are the camps. So then a person begins to understand what was the plan of salvation. So ever since started then in the Garden of Eden, it was a shadow of a camp. The Creator himself was a tabernacle, and they were the people. And then sin came, they were in slavery, and then they were then rescued miraculously. They went to the mountain, near the mountain, to get the laws, and then they started the perimeter, and then the tabernacle, and then the set apart people became established. So then when Yahshua came, rather than sacrificing animals, they would become portable tabernacles, and they would go around the world then saving the Goys outside of the camp. So this is what it means. This is the whole plan of salvation. And these are the camps. Each of these with objective of having people from the outside going in and forming other groups. What did Yahshua said? Only those that the Father draws can come to me. Only those that the Father draws can produce works of justice. Only those that the Father draws are then placed in a camp. And then obviously the people outside of the camp, their bodies are snaked, because they are not in the camps, and only the camps are complete from the renewed covenant, we understand that each camp then complete as it was during the time of the tabernacle in the desert. When there is no sin, then there is no people then sick. But those outside would be, because outside is the place of Satan. So then we understand then later, from this time, Shaul then began to be very influential and gave lots of guidelines for the people. And then obviously later on, when the laws they were changed from the 7th day observance to the 1st day, mostly during the time of Constantine, then there was much later a situation that had taken place. In 1009, there was the destruction of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem. And that's when the time then when Satan went to his prison. Okay? Prior of this time, then was the 1,000 years that the people they ruled with him. Okay? There were camps and people were being saved. However, it came to a point where the world made a decision to destroy the Holy Sepulchre, saying they don't want anything to do with the Messiah. That's when Satan then became in charge of the spiritual line that is so contaminated today. And then false churches came from this spiritual line, they became contaminated. So this is what those tiny houses they mean. They mean churches, false churches. And the objective of this is Nahashtan or Satan to take him down to the inferno. That's what they are. This is the first death spoken of by Yahshua in Revelation. As we understand, 72 hours he spent in this place to give an idea what was the secrecy of death. So then his people would explain what it was. But any other church not related with the camp, that's where the church is at, where Yahweh Yeshua is at, being ministered. Any other religion is this. And they are linked with Satan. This is what this snake around this nearing line means in terms of then those that do believe in some sort of a Savior. But we understand from the scriptures the J deity does not exist in the Holy Torah. So then from this time 1009 up to 2009 is the time where Satan then went to prison. And during this time, people then are going to the inferno because it's a lying religion. And then we are living in this time. This is the time of the reduction of the time for the sake of the elect, of the set apart people. So this is the time where then the Hebrews are going to start returning to their camps, as it was previously. And Shaul then makes a lot of mention regarding them. This is what it means. Then this time what's going to take place is this. Then the vengeance is coming. And the vengeance, we understand, it is shadow from Leviticus, the 23rd chapter, from the 23rd verse to the 44th verse. 23rd through 44th. This is where the time of the vengeance is. It is a shadow, prophetic understanding of the future. So when Satan is then released from the prison of the nearing line, he's going to be thrown back into the world. And this is what it means of then Satan being the absolute wrath, because wrath means the state of justice from the Creator. Because when he did sin, there was no other purpose for him other than wrath. And then great tribulation is going to take place because people must know then the scriptures. Only those people with faith in the Messiah and understanding the scriptures, they're going to survive. This is what a wrath means. And then during these times going to take place also in Revelation, then obviously is going to be the sound of the shofars. So then he began to understand the plan of salvation from the viewpoint of the Mashiach when he came, from the viewpoint of the Creator himself when he himself, through his great mercy, decided to save the people. And he started then obviously with the people mostly regarding Abraham, and then would turn into a big nation, then went to Egypt. From there they were rescued, brought near the mountain, they received the law, became then the tabernacle services in the perimeter, and this was the place that the set apart understanding became very evident. And then obviously during the time of Abraham, they had a dam covenant. It was slaughtered, obviously, the animals, and from later then there would be pardon of their sins, but they were under a dam covenant started with Abraham, and no person can ever break this covenant, neither can be rectified by the Mashiach. So then from there we understand the whole picture shown of the mountain, of the timeline, creation, and then from there the Mashiach, and most importantly in this situation after the Mashiach is Shavuot and the nearing line. Many people don't understand what this nearing line means, but in the world we hear from the Spirit, and it is very contaminated, because then after 1009 Satan then went to his prison and he became in charge of this nearing line. So then there is the satanic of the right, is satanic of the left, because right and left is a Nicolaitan teaching and Yahshua hates it. And then people in either way, those that are not from the camp, they're going straight down to the inferno. And these people deceived with their own churches away from the Torah, they are also marching down, in quote, straight into the inferno. And that's why they're going to be in torment until the closing of the age, named by Yahshua as the first death. Okay, so this explains what it means of people having their own congregation, their own buildings, and being pleasured by doing iniquity, because first day observance, as we know, is iniquity. It's not in line with the Torah. And through Yahshua the Mashiach became a living Torah, and then his people then would teach the world how to become one with him. And then when the vengeance starts, then we understand a fact that it's going to be obviously a number of churches, and those are the establishment of the churches of the vengeance, 7 churches. And then starts then afterwards then the vengeance, the actual vengeance, 490 days, we understand, because the first 490 was the time of the Mashiach. He came to do his part, 11,760 hours of ministry. So then we begin to understand what it means. And these people, for instance, they are outside of the camp. Watch, they have a snake around their bodies. So this is what it means. Any person outside of the camp must be snaked. And those that are in the camp, they are sound and safe because they are on the perimeter of Elohim himself. And then we understand, starting with the revelation, that Yohanan, he was not in the island of Patmos. Main reason why? It's because he was not in fact revealed the revelations in Patmos. It was before. He was sent to Patmos as a maximum security place because he was involved in a triple role. He was teaching the relinking as Shaul was. He was also teaching the kingdom to come, very influential, and also then he received the vengeance part of it. So he had triple role. And then Revelation, then in the 10th chapter, we understand this portion, because then the person that spoke with him, obviously an angel, spoke with him and said, "You must again prophesy upon many nations, peoples, princes, and kings." So then we understand from the 1st until the 10th, he had a certain portion of the vengeance. He had to give the understanding to the people. So then obviously he was not on the island. It was before the island. Okay? So then gives you the understanding what it means of the relink, kingdom to come, and then the vengeance. And then the spiritual line, obviously, during that time was very clear, so his voice was heard around the world. And that's why then later he went to Patmos, but he did not ride from Patmos whatsoever. It was Alcatraz of our days. And then of course later then starts the situation regarding the shofars, and then we understand the unholy anointings because of the sin of the people versus the holy anointings is the justice of the Creator himself. And then later we understand what this means. But then the other factor is we understand from the churches that the revelation then starts when these reduction time then ends, because this is where we are at in the reduction time. This is roughly 2009. We are in 2012, 6012 per the original calendar. So then this time is the time that we are living in, is a time of transition, and that's why the world is so, in quote, crazy, because the nations, they are without direction and the morals are very bad. So it's the very time when Satan is going to be released from the nearing line. However, when the line is clear, then the camps are going to be set in place, and then each of those with Kadosh Kadoshims or tabernacles. And this is what it means later. And then they found the people, the spirits of those that were slain in the altar or under the altar, because they were outside. They were slain outside, but they were linked in a spirit with a nearing line. So from there they are linked with the nearing line, and then from there they are linked with the Holy of Holies. That's where Yahshua is at. And then of course comes the actual vengeance. And then we understand from the churches that the 7 churches, in fact, they are the anchoring, quote, anchoring cities of the vengeance. And then the next board then shows the 7 churches. And there they are: Ephesus, Smyrna, Pergamos, Philadelphia, Sardis, Laodicea, and Thyatira. These are the anchoring churches from where vengeance is coming. Okay? And this is when then Yahshua then died, and what was taking place. And this is when then obviously Satan went to prison, and the lying churches, because they are against the Torah, they violate the Torah, and that's iniquity. That's when Yahshua is going to say, "Depart from me, you who practice iniquity," because of the first day observance. And they're going straight down to the inferno. That's the first death. And then when this time reduction then ends, and we don't know how long it's going to take, but it won't be very long, is the time when the Hebrews are going to start returning to their camps. Because when this nearing line then is at liberty for the usage of then the goys outside of the camp, as it was intended after Yahshua's ascension, then the laws are going to be absolutely placed as they should be. And then either they're going to be found in the camps, or they're going to start dying. This is the scary part, because they are under a damn covenant, and the damn covenant demands them to be in their own perimeters. So this is what it means. Each of these camps are represented around the world, and they are linked with the nearing line, and the nearing line is linked with Yahshua at the right hand of the power on high. And that's why he makes pleadings for the people and petitions for the people, because then the prayers of the set apart people, they are taken by the angels and they are taken up to Yahshua himself. And then he makes the pleadings or the petitions before the Father. And then the people, they remain outside until they are invited in a camp by Ruach HaKodesh, or the Holy Spirit. So it gives us a bit more understanding what it means. And then obviously the time of the vengeance is going to be 490 days as the shadow prophetic understanding of the first 490 days, plus 490 days, half of the prophets, half of the Torah, and then the other half done by the Father himself. This is when then the wrath is absolute, because then the laws are going to be put in place in its absolutely power and understanding. And then starts then afterwards then the sounding of the trumpets. This trumpet, it's not truly a trumpet in the Bible, because the Bible was translated wrong, but it's a shofar sound. And this is the sound of the returning of the Hebrews to their camps, because vengeance is coming. And if they are found outside of their camps as per biblical law, they're going to start dying. It's going to be a very serious time, and this is what it means of great tribulation, because the laws are going to be upheld in utmost. So then we understand then from the start what meant Israel. They received the promised land, and then merely the tabernacle was placed in it. It would be a shadow prophetic of then the future. Then they would simply save the goys. That's the purpose of Israel, and they are not doing their job, are they? So the church outside of this area does not exist. What does exist is this: people being deceived by Satan himself, because he has taken over the nearing line. And then obviously it's going to start then the revelation itself. Then we understand then the seals of the Megillah. These are the seals, 7 seals, 7 spirits, 7 churches, 7 functions of Ruach HaKodesh. Okay, in each of those then are significances. Then there is the situation of the horses. We understand that the horses are the anointings, and the first white horse is the false anointing in the name of the Messiah that doesn't exist. It's iniquity, it's a false anointing that was reinforced because of the evil of the people. And then the red horse also is regarded also another anointing. And then drought. And then the pale horse would be then the earth and the death of the animals, because of the drought is related with the changing of the weather. And then the obviously the red would be then taking the peace away from the earth, and they're going to start slaughtering each other, because this period is the great tribulation period, because then Hashtan is released from his prison and he's going to be in the world, and that's where he's at, in the world. And then the laws are going to be enforced in its entirety. So that's why these areas then they take place fairly quickly, because 490 days is the period of time. And then from there, of course, there are other areas, and then the starts then the shofars, because when the seventh seal then is broken, then the sounding of the shofars, and then the sounding of the shofars, and also the cups of plagues, they are related with each other. So there are layers of revelation, simply layers. And these are then obviously the first, and then the seventh seal comes, and then the first shofar, and then comes obviously with related with the weather, hail, and then more drought than it was previously. And there is a lot of damage going on. That's why the dam is there. A lot of people are going to get hurt. And then a third part of the earth is going to be burnt as a result of the drought related with the weather. And then the second shofar then obviously is going to be the explosion of areas because of the earthquake plus fires. And then the third part then died as a result of it. And then the third shofar then comes the atomic blast that we understand that's going to come. He saw as a burning lamp coming from heaven. This is what it means. And the third part of the ships were destroyed. And then we understand the part of the world that it would be involved with this third part would obviously be the part around India, around China, and those areas over there that would be obviously then there. This is where most concentration of the ships are at. So the third part would be this area north of Australia and the islands related. That's where the nuclear blast is going to be at. And then obviously the explanation then later regarding the shofars, a person can easily understand. For instance, when atomic blast takes place, then there are consequences. And we understand the third part then of the ships are destroyed, and we understand from where it's coming from. And then the rivers are going to be contaminated. And then afterwards there is the fourth shofar, and then the nuclear debris, and then the sun and the lunar view are going to be darkened because of the nuclear blast. And then there is the other shofar. If you can understand each of these, then consequences mostly of the nuclear explosion. So then we begin to understand what it means. But much more coming up. Please stay tuned.